It's the week of March 19th, 2018, and you're listening to the Pioneer GrowingPoint Agronomy Podcast. Today we discuss all the other stuff for 2018 growing season. I'm your co-host, DuPont Pioneer Field Agronomist Josh Shofner. With me is DuPont Pioneer Field Agronomist Brian Buck. This is episode 5 of 2018. Welcome back, listeners.
Josh, we're live again this week. We are on the road to Zumbrota-Mazeppa High School in the ag classroom. You can hear the bell going off probably in the background. Big thank you to Andrea for letting us into the classroom today, the ag science teacher, but also the FFA leader. So it's been fun to get on the road and talk to some students.
Yeah, so this is kind of show 5, Brian, of our 5 kind of show series, a pre-plant. Just a little review. Episode 1 was kind of fun. We had Chad Greenway as a guest on the show, and we talked about variety selection. Episode 2, we talked crop nutrition. We kind of reviewed a bunch of things there. Episode 3, actually, Fred Schleep joined the show because you were having a baby at that time. Congratulations again. We talked planting considerations, and last week we talked about crop protection, and today we're going to kind of fill in the blanks with all the other stuff.
Yeah, so, we talked kind of those 4 big topics right away. Topic 5, all the other stuff, is also a big topic, and I think it's where a lot of our questions actually come from is, is this beneficial, isn't it, and, maybe what's the best return on investment if you're only going to choose a couple of them. So getting started, Josh, I think we're just going to do a little rapid fire. We can throw some topics at each other. Zinc and starter for corn, what do you think?
Well, that's a great question, a question that I've had many times as I've made the rounds at crop shops and in round tables one-on-one with growers of, we're spending, maybe anywhere from $7 to $8 per acre on zinc in our starter. Is it worth that investment or not? And certainly it's twofold. In my opinion, in most cases, I'm going to suggest a quart of liquid zinc in furrow starter with your 1030 furrow or similar starter. But certainly it's not, we can't ignore the soil test, Brian. So if we look at when we do soil testing, a lot of growers probably don't always do a zinc test. Some do, some don't. But as we grid sample, certainly we'd like to see that 1 part per million. I look at soil tests. Sometimes we see as low as half a part per million. In that situation, we're probably going to need more than the quart of in-furrow zinc. Certainly want to fix the soil test level. But then there's times where we see that 3 to 4 part per million zinc. And at that point, are you going to get as likelihood of response with a quart of zinc per acre in the starter? Probably not, where, maybe that could be a discussion of, could we take a little bit of time off on the zinc or not? But in most cases, I'm going to suggest that is well worth the investment. You think back 10, 15 years ago, we used to see zinc deficiency. As we've corrected our soil, added it, we rarely see zinc deficiency anymore. So certainly it is working, where my take is I support. So keep the rapid fire going, Brian. We get this one a lot, but soybean seed treatment for 2018.
Yeah, so soybean seed treatment question comes up quite a bit. And, you talk seed treatments in soybeans, there's more than one option there, obviously. You have anywhere from inoculants, fungicides, insecticides, and some new nematicides. So first things first, I think where seeding rates have changed over the last 10 years, maybe from 180,000 down into that 140 range. Probably the first thing for me that makes it important to keep a seed treatment out, we're dropping a lot less seeds out there. It's nice to have that even stand and make sure we don't lose too many plants. But if I look at, the disease and the pests we're going after, Pythium's a big one early season. So if it's cool and wet out there, Pythium can be a pretty tough pest and can cause a lot of replants. So seed treatments do cover that really well. And as it does get, later into the season, or if it's a warmer spring and it's wet, Phytophthora is also something we really need to worry about. So I look at last year and where the seed treatment market's going. We launched a new one, DuPont Lumicina, which has outstanding Phytophthora control, which has been great to see just with how much pressure Phytophthora can have. So depending on the situation, I'm a seed treatment guy, especially as you're lowering seeding rates, and I think they're good to have out there. And there's other options too now for SDS when you think about Olivo and some other things. So
I agree 100%.
Yeah. So closing wheels, Josh.
Oh, closing wheels on the planter. This question comes up quite often when I'm public speaking, and what is the best closing wheel? And really, the answer to that is there's probably not a right or wrong answer, Brian. Certainly, I have a lot of growers that run the standard, rubber wheel doubles on both sides. Some growers that are in minimum tillage might run, the spiked or maybe even that roller finger. And really, there isn't one that's better than the other. It really just is based on conditions. I always tell a grower, I wouldn't outthink closing wheels too much unless you're willing to take them off and change them as conditions change. And I've yet to meet a grower that's willing to change out 12 or 24 closing wheels as conditions change. But I do have a lot of growers that try to hit both sides, the best of both worlds, where they might run one rubber wheel on one side and maybe a spike or a finger on the other. And certainly that's probably, if you look at just the rule of average, you'll probably average out a little better in that kind of a system. But certainly it's a bit of a guessing game. And if you look at 10 years of data, I think the data on any system is going to be the same. However, if you do run one of each, it is important that maybe you offset every row, switch which side they're on, just so your planter doesn't track a little bit funny. Say you put a spike and one rubber on the other side, and you do it on the right side all the way across, you could get your planter to track a little funny, but kind of switching every other row would be the only suggestion I have. But there's not a lot of data that suggests one is flat out better than the other. It's all conditions based.
Yep.
Brian, so moving along, nitropyrin for nitrogen stabilization, certainly a big topic in the state of Minnesota and in general as we look at stabilizing N.
Yeah, so stabilizing nitropyrin, what that does as an active, it's really protecting your nitrogen once it's in the soil. So think about denitrification and, those wet springs we have where you can get, nitrogen basically out into that soil solution. So it's going to hold that nitrogen in the ammonium form longer, which is more stable, and keeping it from getting to that nitrate form that can leach a little quicker. So nitropyrin, the two different products that are out there are Dow AgroScience brand Instinct and N-Serve. So N-Serve is what's going to go in your anhydrous, Instinct what goes on the urea. So both do what they advertise. They do hold more nitrogen in that ammonium form longer. So they might have a fit for your operation depending on soil types and what your plan is going into the year. So as advertised, I think. Another bell.
Another bell.
All right,
Awesome.
That means it's time for urease inhibitors.
Yeah, so urease inhibitors, again, trying to manage nitrogen and not have it lost. Certainly kind of the opposite of the nitropyrin products, where you're trying to protect nitrogen from, moving down in the soil profile, leaching away, as nitrate. Urease inhibitor, we're trying to protect it from volatilizing into the atmosphere. So this is a product that if we look at, surface applications, or maybe we can't do incorporation to 4 inches deep like we'd like to. How do we protect it from volatilizing into the atmosphere? If you're side dressing, some surface applied urea, or you're no-tilling in some warmer conditions as the spring gets later, it's certainly a good product. Is it something that's necessary on every single acre that you apply urea on, or 28%? I would say probably no. You just got to look at temperature, time of year, and can you incorporate it or not? But there's certainly it's a good product, has great value when there's risk of volatilization, I'll put it that way.
Yep, surface applied summer side dress is a good spot for it. So that kind of wraps up our 5 topics, Josh. So we did 5 episodes this year, and I think we might recap and go through the 5 starter episodes we did to get the year started here. So do you want to talk variety selection first? That was our first show.
I think we're just going to kind of take a look at what were maybe the highlights of each show. What are the key takeaways? If I think to the show 1, which had Greenway, where we talked about variety selection, for me, I think it's really looking at variety selection. When you think about corn rootworm, the right trait, you think about SDS variety selection. You get one chance to get it right. You think of Gosselswilt as well. As soon as the corn planter leaves the field, I'll say it, that is your plan to protect yourself from rootworm, SDS, and Gosselswilt for the season. We're just double checking, making sure we got that right. Reminder that 2016 was a lot of SDS and soybeans. We're going back on those acres here in 2018, so I want to be thinking about where those were, but I think that's the big takeaway from episode 1. Brian, episode 2, we talk crop nutrition. What's your big takeaway there?
Yeah, 2 takeaways. First thing is sulfur. Make sure you have a plan in place, one that preferably utilizes the sulfate form and potentially elemental also, but sulfate form is important. 6 to 1, so every 6 pounds of nitrogen you apply, try to get a pound of sulfur out there with it at the same time. The second piece is we went through some data on that one, just going through deficiencies across the state, maybe in P and K. Just know where your soil tests are at and what your return on investment potential is from spreading, just to keep an eye on it.
Yeah, and Fred Schleep and I, when you were gone there, we talked planting date quite extensively, and really our takeaway there is, Brian, once we're past insurance date and the soil conditions are fit, we don't look at the calendar or necessarily the weather ahead if it's fit. We get the crop in the ground and the yield advantages. We went through the data. It certainly supports that, doing that 100%.
Yeah, so crop protection last week, we talked quite a bit about fungicides. Key takeaways there, beans, we see a really consistent return on investment to putting that fungicide out as long as it's timed well, so that R3 timing is extremely important. Corn, I think there's 4 to 5 different factors. We'll do a show right before the corn this summer to go through that, but great tool to have. Beans, super consistent return.
Yeah, and I think today all the other stuff, we went through it. Certainly, looking at those inputs, I know there's a lot of inputs that are probably in that $8 to $9, $10 range. Just really taking a look at your operation, looking at some local data, and certainly talking to your local Pioneer sales rep or us, and we'll help make those decisions to make sure that they're profitable. Brian, always important to know where to find the show.
You can find it on Twitter. I am at FarmerBuck1.
I am at Josh Shofner. You can also find the show live on Periscope on my Twitter feed. You can catch it there every week. Also, Brian, podcast.pioneer.com. There you can subscribe via iTunes.
And the other place, YouTube, if you search our name followed by Pioneer, it should pop up our episodes. Well, that's a wrap for episode 5 of 2018. This show is recorded in Zumbrota, Minnesota. It is produced by Josh Shofner and Brian Buck. Thanks for listening, and be sure to tune in next time.